Hello, can y'all hear me? Hello, can you guys hear me? Type yes in the chat box if you can hear me. Okay. We got Megan. How about Maddie and Lily? You guys hear me? Maddie, it looks like you were having a little audio trouble. Are you able to hear me? Shh, shh, shh.
Yes,
Maybe
sorry.
not? Okay, there we go.
I can't chat right now. I'm driving.
No worries. Just wanted to make sure you could hear. All righty.
Cool.
So let's get this show on the road. So you want to be a PA, or you want to know a little bit more about the PA CAT. That's what we're here to talk about today. I'm going to say that this is not going to be the full hour. And the reason why is there's not a whole heck of a lot of information about the PA CAT right now to talk about, because it's a brand new test. And I'm just going to be introducing to you some of the things that we know about it and some of my sort of gut feelings about what it's going to be about in the near future. So without further ado, let's get started. So first off, registration for the PA CAT is pretty much going to be the same as registering for any of these tests. If you need accommodations, give yourself at least 3 months to get accommodations for it. So you want to apply for accommodations before you actually register for your PA CAT. If you're going for accommodations, what you want to make sure you have is one of two things. Either if you had accommodations in high school, your IEP, your individualized education plan, and that will be usually sufficient information for the company that administers the test to develop a plan for your accommodations. If you didn't get accommodations in high school, it's going to be more difficult to get accommodations, and you will probably need to visit with an educational psychologist who can evaluate for you for a learning disability and evaluate you for the need for accommodations. And that can cost you some time and some money. That's why you want to give yourself plenty of time to get this thing figured out if you need accommodations, that being things like extra time, test reader, 2-day administrations, that kind of stuff. Then you would purchase and register for the test. So this is one of the weird things. This is what makes the PA CAT a little different. You have to pay for the test before you register for the test. So you have to buy access to the exam, which gives you actually access to one full practice test and their book, the official guide to the PA CAT kind of thing. And that's going to cost you currently anyway, $228. My gut tells me it's probably going to go up next year, but we'll see. We don't know. We don't have that information just yet. Then you can, once you've purchased that access, then you can apply to register to take the test at a testing center. And I want to say they use Prometric. Yeah, I think they use Prometric testing centers, and you can register for any time that Prometric testing center is available and open. And right now, Prometrics are, some of them are open, some of them are not. In fact, like you might find that one place in the Bay Area, a Prometric center, might cancel a weekend, but another place in the same similar area, just like 20, 30 miles away, might actually be open. So it's a little bit still weird with the way COVID's working and where these places are going to be open. So you might have to go a little farther than you would expect it to take it. You can reschedule or cancel, but you have to do it about a week in advance. And it will cause you to take on an extra charge to do that. Can you retake the PA CAT? Well, yes, you can. But you can reschedule right as soon as you finish the test, or not reschedule, but schedule a retake right after you finish your first test. But it has to be a month and a half later. It has to be, you have to schedule out 6 more weeks, and then you can't take it more than 3 times in a 1-year period. So basically, they're just saying you can take it 3 times in a year, and that is it. If you need to take it more than that, you got to get approval. Like if you need to take it in the next year, so maybe your first year didn't go so well, you need to take it again in the second year, second cycle, then you'd have to get permission to do it. That's probably going to change, like to be more like a lot of the other tests. So what is the structure of the PA CAT? So why, like, let's just talk for a minute about why the PA CAT was designed in the first place. Up to this point, they've been using, well, PA schools used to use the MCAT. And a long time ago, the PA schools used MCAT as a judgment of whether people were ready to go, basically pass their pants in their pantry. And basically, there was very little correlation between the MCAT and their ability to do well in those tests because they're such a different kind of test. So rather than use the MCAT, a lot of PA schools picked up the GRE instead. And not every school requires the GRE, but a lot of them do. And the GRE, likewise, doesn't show a lot of correlation between ability on the GRE and how to pass the pantsy and the pantry, because those are again, a different kind of test. In fact, the GRE, which most of you are probably going to have to take if you're planning on going to PA school anyway, because not a lot of schools yet require the PA CAT, but the GRE is just English and math, and it's high school level at that. So you don't really see like science content on, you don't see science content at all. So that's where the PA CAT was born. At a couple schools, some newer schools, an effort was put forward to say, is there any way we can create a test that will help predict ability on passing their standardized tests for certification? And thus the PA CAT was born. They've been testing it out for a few years, and this past summer was the first time it was used in the wild, although we're going to see that it wasn't used a lot. Basically, you're going to get 9 separate subjects sequentially. I believe there's only going to be one break, although they didn't give a actual schedule for the test. And I don't know anybody who's personally taken it, and I was not allowed to take it this first year. So I can't tell you exactly what the dated, like the minute to minute schedule is during the test. I would imagine it's split probably halfway, because most of these tests tend to be. My gut tells me it probably splits right after the anatomy, physiochemistry, and then it might get a short break between the genetics and the biochemistry, just because of the way the content breaks down there. Overall, it's 240 questions in 4.5 hours, which is going to be roughly the way it times out, 1.25 minutes per question, but that can vary just depending on how the timing works on different sections. So you will get a pre-exam like basically demographics survey, because this is a test that is being tested. It is not yet adopted by many places, so they want more information. And there's a post-exam survey, and the pre-exam survey you have to do. You can't skip it. The post-exam is more of a what you like about this test kind of set of questions, and you can skip those if you want. And you can see the content of the test is actually pretty varied, from everywhere from basic general chemistry and biology all the way to including anatomy, physiology, micro, genetics, and even psych-soc. So content-wise, with the exception of physics, it resembles the MCAT more. Although from examples and from people I have discussed it with, it seems like, and the people I discussed it with was the people that wrote the test, it seems like a lot of the questions are formatted as in clinical language. So it's not like a reading comp test like the MCAT. It's not like the DAT, in which it's just basic, simple recall questions. It's sort of hybrid in the middle, where you're given a clinical description of something, and then you have to apply your content knowledge to just deciphering what it says and answer the question. So I would put it somewhat halfway intermediate in difficulty between the type of DAT questions that you see, which is basic memory, to what the MCAT has, which is reading comp. So that means it's not going to be a very simple test. It's going to be a lot of work to do well on a test like this. Scoring, they finally released their testing score range. It is going to be 200 to 800 for this test. That's a huge range. But if you think about it, it's fairly normal, because 500 is probably going to be their median this first year. I can't imagine them having 500 as anything but the median this year, because it's the first year they have actual data. So that's a pretty normal thing. Now, as far as I know, I don't know of any PA schools that have outright said this is what we want you to get on your PA CAT. In fact, most places that are using the PA CAT are still allowing people to take the GRE and use that instead of the PA CAT, because this is really a pilot year. Here's proof that 2020 really derailed the rolling out of this thing too. Instead of giving percentiles, which is, you know, first all the way to 100th percentile, they're giving quintiles. And so they're going to put everybody in categories ranging 20% units. So the lowest quintile is 0% or 0 to 20. The next one is 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, and 80 to 100. So I would anticipate, if you know anybody who did have to take the PA CAT, they're probably looking for this top 2 quintiles this year as being competitive candidates, which is basically 60th percentile and up. But they are not distinguishing people that much. What that means is very few people took this test. They didn't have enough people to actually set it up as percentiles and differentiate the individuals taking the test. So I think what that means in the long run is it's going to take longer to get this thing adopted by many PA schools. So you should all be pretty happy that you're probably not going to have to take the PA CAT. It's going to be a longer rollout, I think, than what was originally anticipated. So have any of you guys actually looked at PA schools that you need to apply to that are going to need the PA CAT to apply? So I would expect that you probably won't run into that. So cross your fingers that you won't have to actually take this thing, and you can just stick with the GRE, which is a lot more straightforward, a lot more. What is the content in this thing? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through each and every one of these lists in great detail. If you want to, I can send you the slides, just email me. But I'm going to point out a few things. Anatomy. This is actually a heavier topic on the PA CAT than even on the MCAT. So if you have the opportunity to take an anatomy class, I actually suggest you do it before taking a test like the PA CAT. They get into all the major systems, muscles, like they called out like very specific muscles on the information that I could find about it. Like knowing the difference of like which muscle keeps your foot from rolling left versus rolling right, and things like that. So it is pretty detailed apparently on the test of what the anatomy is that's getting covered. So it's good to have a gross class before you do this. The physiology is pretty much what you would expect. It's pretty much just listing all of the major systems. This would be about on par with what you would use to study for the MCAT, because it's all the same kind of things: metabolism, nervous system, cardiac system, gastro GI system. In fact, I could de-emphasize the GI system because you're probably going to get very few questions about it, and so on and so forth. So nothing out of the ordinary, at least with physiology. An NPV 101 class would be sufficient for something like this. The chemistry reads just like it's straight out of GChem syllabus, with one exception. They toss organic chemistry on here as part of the just chemistry content. So what I want you to note is they only have alkanes and cycloalkanes on here, which means the bulk of the reactions that you learned in your OChem class are not necessary. So you could probably take the PA CAT before you finished organic and you would be just fine, because it's really going to be just talking about basic nomenclature, identifying resonance, understanding what hybrid orbitals and atomic or molecular orbitals look like, and how that ties in with stereochemistry and spectroscopy. So that's actually a good thing, because it means very little organic is necessary. Which, here's the flip side of it. Do you guys know what the problem is with this? Do PA schools require organic chemistry usually? They don't, and that's the problem. So what this is telling me is you probably should take at least one OChem class if you're planning on taking the PA CAT, even though it's not necessary for for admissions into your PA program. It could be the first quarter, or you could do the survey class. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it wouldn't have to be the full year program of organic chemistry. You don't need all that information. Thank you, Lillian, the 8 series. Because you don't need all the super nitty gritty details for this test. And the schools that do accept or do require organic, few and far between as they are, I believe also would accept the 8 series as OChem credit, because they're not really interested in the OChem there. Biology content, again, pretty much the normal expectations here. Understanding genetics, cell cycle, your basic micro, your basic communication systems in the body, how cells work, all that kind of fun stuff. Something that I want to make sure you realize is not here is plant biology is not on here. So, and that makes sense. Plant biology is not necessary for you to work on humans. So you probably wouldn't need to know about that. So at least they're nice in that respect. The DAT is not so nice in that respect. Micro, this is, I think it's a good class, and I think it's a fun class. In the micro class itself, I find the lab is more important for what skills you learn, but here they're going to be testing you on the content of the micro class itself, as in like being able to identify what life cycles of viruses, life cycles of bacteria, life cycles of various fungi and parasites. So I honestly think this is probably one of the most fun classes I ever took as an undergrad. So have fun with micro. It's actually pretty groovy. Although be careful of the stinky stuff. Gram-negative bacteria. Bleh. Autoclaving those things. Genetics. Nothing deep here. Again, the regular genetics class that you're going to take here is going to cover everything you need. They don't get much into molecular genetics, thankfully, on this test. It's mostly Mendelian and population genetics, dealing with the, oh gosh, what are those 2 equations? The Hardy-Weinberg equations. That's going to be on there as well. Biochem, you could probably get away without taking biochem before you take this thing. It's probably better to have it. But the biochem they cover on here is pretty mainstream. You probably covered it in your bio class itself and or physiology. Like if you look at the first part, intermediary metabolism, that's something you're going to get in physiology, talking about gluconeogenesis, glycolysis, et cetera. And the rest is just really structural. How do things work? How do nucleic acids work? How do hormones work? So fun times. And then finally, behavioral sciences. This is going to be your psych and your soc. As far as psych and soc are concerned, Psych 1 is really the only class I think you need to take here. Soc 3 is a possible, but notice how there's a lot less in the sociology world here compared to all the rest. And most of the sociology is social psychology that you're going to deal with, which goes well with any Psych 1 class you might have taken. So that should be sufficient. And then finally, statistics, and everybody is probably going to be taking statistics class of some sort. So there you go. Be ready for understanding what a normal distribution is, sampling, et cetera. So a class that actually surprisingly helps with this is honestly Psych 41, which is research methods. They get into more of the usage of statistical data. This is a little bit more on the side of, calculating statistical data, but you gotta understand better with Psych 41 what it's all for. Why are you doing all these different statistical manipulations? So due to the content on the test, here's what we look at for prereqs. You'll see I've got general bio, general chemistry. There's the Chem 8AB for organic chemistry, Psych 1, Psych 41, stats, biochem, genetics, micro, physiology, and anatomy. Those are all the ones that I think are definites that you want to have before taking this test. Soc 3 probably can get away with it. That's why it's not quite as bold. And then cell bioimmunology, not necessary for this test. It's not going to cover these topics, but they're not bad classes to have as a PA. It's good to have some of those upper division classes. So at some point you might want to take those, but it's not something you have to take before taking the PA CAT. Now, here's the frustrating thing. What PA CAT resources are there available to prep? There is one official practice test, and there's no other practice materials for this. There's one official guide, and there's no other books about the PA CAT right now. There's literally 0 ways to prep for this except for registering for the test or buying the test, which gives you that practice test in the official guide, and then taking it. You have one practice test, and you have one book, which is going to make it a lot harder to prep for. I would give it a couple years before we're going to start seeing quality prep materials from other companies. Now, let me tell you a secret. The reason this is true is the company who wrote the test is a test prep company. Let me say it again. The company that wrote the test is a test prep company. So they created a test for which they have the only tools to create prep materials for it. And so far, they have basically created almost no prep materials for it. I feel for you if you have to take the PA CAT. We will always find a way. If you have to take it, work with me, and I'm sure we can co-opt some MCAT and DAT materials and turn it into a reasonable facsimile of at least the content needed to do well on the PA CAT for content review. The biggest problem is still going to be that limitation of practice problems for this thing. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Like I said, it's going to take a couple years for the test prep companies to catch up on something like this, especially since they kept people like myself from taking the test this year. Because I tried to take it and they said no. So they're not letting ringers like myself go in and take these tests yet. What kind of a timeline are you going to need for something like this? To get through the content that you should be getting through, you want at least 3 months. And then I say do as many full lengths as you can. Right now, that's really just do that one full length again and again and again until you get the structure of the test. Rotate through your subjects. Don't try to make sure you understand all of the bio before you move on to chemistry or something like that, because it tends to be that you forget things as you go. And so you want to sort of balance it. So you're doing a little chemistry every week, a little biology every week, a little bit of A&P every week, a little bit of psych soc every week, trying to get those things working in parallel and integrated with one another. And if you do a good job of studying, you probably only need to spend 4 to 6 hours per day if you give yourself that 3 months or more to study. If you go to like 4 or 5 months, you could probably drop it down to like 2 to 4 hours per day. And that would be reasonable. So the unfortunate part is I wish I could say more about how to prep for this thing, but honestly, you have no choices at this point. You have one choice for prep, and you're just going to have to use it. So let me open it up for questions. What kind of questions do you guys have for me about this new test? And you can unmute if you want to. You don't have to type your answer or questions. When do I anticipate this will be the only test accepted by PA schools? I would not say ever. I think you're going to see some resistance to PA schools adopting this thing in the long term, just because it is a test prep test, or it is a test made by test prep company. They have been working with certain PA schools, but it's not some of the most respected ones that they've been working with. They worked with, I want to say, a school in Louisiana, and I know they worked with Central Michigan to help pilot this originally, to do the research on it. And like the PA school in Michigan had some issues there for a while. It was Central Michigan, and they had some accreditation problems. So I think you're going to see some resistance. So maybe not ever, but if it's going to be, it's not going to be for like 5 or more years before you're going to see widespread adoption of this test as the only test they accept. I think what you will see is that they will accept the PA CAT or the GRE in the next 5 years. But again, just put it out there. That's speculation. I can't speak for any of these schools. They might make some really wacky decisions. Who knows? I think COVID probably helped the slowdown of that too. So if there's one thing COVID did for us, it slowed down the adoption of the PA CAT. Yay. Any other questions? That was a good question. Seems like there might not be any additional questions. And if that's the case, I want to thank y'all for coming. I know, like I said, I couldn't give you much more insight into this thing than what I did, but once I get the opportunity to take this, I'm going to try to sign up for it again in January and try to take it then and see if I can get past the gatekeeper there, just so I can find out what this test is really about. No problem. So thank you all for coming. We can go ahead and call it a day here. Lindley,